If you don't drink coffee as a law student, I'm hurt. Welcome back to E.W Legal Series, guys. It's been a while because I've decided to do something a little bit different with my channel to implement more of an informative discussion with primary research. So essentially what I've done is I created a questionnaire and I sent it out to solicitors and barristers to give more of an insight into their personal experiences and views. A lawyer is an umbrella term for a solicitor or a barrister, and I think there's a lot of confusion from it because a lot of countries have the two combined, so they do the roles of both a solicitor and barrister, but I think the UK law is very good because it's extremely structured, which means there's different qualification routes for both a solicitor and barrister and different skills to be learnt by both of them. If you haven't already seen my qualification video on solicitors and barristers, I'm going to link it up. A solicitor presides in an office. Essentially, a law firm is a business. It tries to maximise its revenues whilst minimising its cost base to generate profit. Barristers preside in what is called a chambers. Essentially, they have to contribute a percentage to the chambers. I guess it's sort of similar to what partners do in a law firm if they're equity partners, but essentially the money goes towards maintaining the chambers itself, running fees, the clerk's fees and all administrative fees. The clerk is essentially the barrister's assistant. They are the person that adjudicates all the work for them, sort of like the middle person who goes between the solicitor and barrister, because the solicitor will forward the work to the clerk and the clerk then appropriately resources it to the barrister. Question time. So I asked barristers and solicitors what they thought the best firm to go into as a junior solicitor. Would it be small, medium or large? Now, the most common answer, and it was drawn, was small and medium. The reason for small was that it would be more personable and a lot more responsibility, a lot more is expected of you, and therefore you learn more skills. With medium, the reasoning was essentially that it gives you a very varied experience in different sectors. However, in a small medium firm, you wouldn't be exposed to big cases or as much opportunity as you would in a larger firm. Solicitors are mainly employed, so it's very rare that they will specialise. However, it's common to specialise in bigger magic circle firms because they're split into departments, so you could be in a department such as intellectual property, infrastructure and tax, international, criminal litigation, or something along those lines, and you'll be working in teams and working on sort of big cases within those niche areas. However, in a smaller firm, you're more a jack of all trades. You might be doing various things and have various different clients, such as doing property, land disputes, wills, divorces, which is family law, and a bit of criminal litigation. Becoming a barrister is a specialist career, and so it's unlikely that if you're working at a criminal or family chamber that you're going to also be exposed to areas such as land, common law or commercial law. There is more career progression as a solicitor because you're exposed to a wider variety of things. You can also, after a few years of being a solicitor, specialise in-house at a business, be a consultant, an advisor, or even be a salaried partner. For a barrister, it's often becoming a QC, which is not often the case until sort of 10 to 20 years experience, so a very long time, and a judge, which happens after years of experience. I asked the professionals, what is the most difficult area of law to get into? The most common answer was commercial law. It's because it's quite difficult. You not only have to learn the law, but you also have to have a sense of commerciality about you and understand how business works. And then they also spoke of sports law and intellectual property law, which are also niche areas. I'm about to disappoint you. So it's completely speculative, depending on what firm you go into. If you're Magic Circle solicitor, trainee solicitor, you could be earning a lot. So you could be on sort of 50 to 70,000 a year, depending on the firm. And the reason why it's so highly paid is because they have big clients, and so they can afford to pay that much. But with a small to medium firm, it's still speculative. Going into criminal family, a small firm, you could be earning sort of averagely 20,000 a year. But with experience, this of course will go up to, say, 5 years, 30,000, 10 years, 40,000, and keep going up based on your experience. A lot of solicitors will start as paralegals, which sees them doing similar work to a trainee solicitor. So with a barrister, earnings are a lot higher, of course, because you're self-employed, you can set your own fees, and the more work you do, I guess, the more income you're going to generate. Barristers in private practice can earn from around 60,000 to 200,000. Again, this is speculative and you'll have to do your own research because it depends on what chambers you're interested in. Obviously, private clients are going to pay more, and so you're probably going to be earning more in a chancery set, a commercial set. However, with a criminal and family chambers, there is a lot of legal aid work, and so you have to be mindful that a lot of the work you do will be conducted for free. It's not to say you don't get paid a good wage, it's just to say, it's probably the least well paid in the arena of areas of law that you can go into. There are significant financial obstacles as a barrister. It costs increasingly more than it does to qualify as a solicitor. I also explained in my previous video about qualifying to become a solicitor or barrister that you have to do a stage called pupillage to become a barrister, and with pupillage it's a year long and you have to shadow a pupil supervising barrister. And you get paid around 15 to 18,000, which has risen in fact from 13,000, which is good. So I asked the professionals, why did you choose a solicitor over barrister or vice versa? I got an overwhelming amount of responses for this one, quite lengthy ones. So I'm just going to pick my two favourite out of the bunch. It is completely anonymous, so I have no idea who has said what. So my favourite one for solicitor was, I was cut off being a barrister by a barrister when I was 14. I found that quite funny. For the person that said that, I'm actually intrigued to know what that barrister said to you. So give me a message on LinkedIn if that is you. And for a barrister, I found this one quite funny. This is my favourite. I didn't want a 9 to 5 existence, but I got a 24/7 one instead. Solicitors are like advisors. They have a lot more client contact and they are essentially the initial starting point before the case goes to the barrister. The way I like to compare it is a GP and a specialist. Now, not because one is more superior than the other, I just think it's a good example to use. So the solicitor finds out everything about the case, will diagnose it with some solutions, and then the barrister will resolve the case by eliciting the truth from it. Timekeeping is an integral part of a solicitor's day-to-day. I think it's in 6-minute intervals that they have to time record. This assesses and monitors their performance at the end of the year, but also it's so that the client can be billed accurately without any questions being asked. A solicitor can actually gain higher rights of audience, which means that they can actually go and litigate for the client. However, this is rare because a barrister essentially specialises, saves the solicitor time, and so the solicitor at that point would rather pass the case on. Solicitor does more procedural things like researching, gathering evidence and conducting interviews. On the other hand, it could be argued that barristers really embody the law for its true purpose, because you're advocating for a client who doesn't have a voice of their own. You're using the case law to provide a persuasive argument to win a case, and this is seen as like an ideal thing for a law student because it's so stigmatised. We see it all the time in the media. We see massive court cases. The bulk of their career is advocating in court on behalf of their client. However, when they're not in court, they'll often be at chambers conducting paperwork, and this paperwork mostly consists of creating skeleton arguments. The reason they're called skeleton arguments, you're probably like, what the hell does that mean? Is because they just are the bones of the argument, and there's no actual flesh. And this is a terminology that I was taught at law school, but it essentially means that you're just write your core arguments. One of the biggest skills learned in advocacy is ability to think on your feet and respond to a situation as it arises. So I think actually conducting skeleton arguments is more essential and important because anything can happen on the day. I gave the statement, family life is hard in the profession, with the options being always, never and sometimes. 75% of people said sometimes, 25% said always. I think with a solicitor, because you're employed, you get a lot more security, sick pay, benefits, holiday. If you're working in a firm, you're obviously working with people. These are people who you can rely on and you can make friends with. It's more of a team-spirited atmosphere. You can consult and observe and learn from them. Sometimes you'll have cases that overlap each other, because with a solicitor, you'll often have that client contact to the end of the case. They'll rely on you for things like emailing and updates. And so you could argue there's a lot of prioritisation as a solicitor, because you can have several overlapping cases at once. A barrister is far more competitive in what they do, in the lifestyle they create, because essentially they're going into court to win for their client, and this comes with it a certain level of tension and conflict that I don't think you always get as a solicitor. It's very rare for a barrister to say no to a case. They want to take on as much cases as possible, especially when they're starting out, because they want to build their reputation. Most barristers find that the work they do is quite isolating and lonely. However, when they go back to chambers, it's quite a nice atmosphere. From what I have learned anyway from my personal experiences, barristers are a lot more helpful. They're much more willing to help someone on their career journey. Barristers are subject to the cab rank rule, which essentially means they have to take every case that's given to them and they can't dispute it, even if the client is unpopular, in the interests of justice. An important point to note is in 2017 there was severe budget cut to the criminal justice system and legal aid firms started shutting down. It meant barristers were doing a lot of work for free. I asked solicitors and barristers what the most important skill in their profession would be. For solicitors, the most common answer I received was communication. Most common answer for the most important skill to be a barrister was resilience. Working hours for a solicitor tend to be 9 to 5, typical business hours. From the questionnaire that I did, a lot said 50 hours. Typical working day in court is 10 to 4. However, barrister can get out quicker than that if something becomes delayed, and then they often tend to have the rest of the day free to themselves or go back to chambers and work. It's rare to see a case go past 4 p.m. Although becoming a solicitor and barrister are equally arduous, I would say that becoming a barrister is more competitive, and I say this subjectively based on my research and my experiences. If you haven't already seen my diversity stats vid, I'm going to link it above. Quite interesting if you're considering becoming either a solicitor or barrister. Now, the reason I say it's more competitive is because, first of all, a chamber's upon pupillage, which is a necessary requirement for someone who wants to eventually qualify as a barrister, does not guarantee you tenancy. Conversely, when a solicitor, an aspiring solicitor, goes to do a vacation scheme or paralegal work, it almost inevitably leads to a training contract. In most cases, if you're looking at medium to large firms, usually recruit 30 above. For larger firms, you're looking at 60 above a year, whereas a chambers recruits 1 to 3 a year. I haven't seen above 3. In rare cases, maybe 4 people, but the average is usually 2. So it's extremely competitive. And if we're talking about recruitment against our current economy and everything that's happened with COVID-19, you know, you're looking at one person being recruited now, if not none. Becoming a solicitor is a lot more of a popular route, with 128 qualified practicing solicitors at the moment, compared to the 16,000 barristers. Solicitor route is much more accessible, flexible and a cheaper option. I am going to end this video, guys, on one of the last questions I asked these professionals is, what guidance would you like to give to students considering a career in this profession? And I got an overwhelming amount of responses, some of them were quite long, so what I'm going to do is just pick out the ones which I think are most important. My favourite one was persevere. Being challenged is inevitable, being defeated optional. I love this phrase. It's very simple, to the point, but very career focused. I think going into this career, you need to be very optimistic. There's going to be a lot of failures, but inevitably failures lead you to a pathway of success. So I'll give my own personal example because I don't mind sharing it. I applied for over 20 placements. These were in businesses for mostly legal positions. But you know what, these businesses, although I tailored my application, I wasn't passionate about the work, doing the work in those firms. I knew it's not what I wanted to do. But the failure somewhat did get to me to the point where I gave up with placements. However, it led me to an opportunity in the voluntary organisation I'm working at, and I've been, as you can tell, been very happy in this video because I recently found out that I've been offered a 2-year job contract, doing something that I absolutely love doing, and is basically a starting point for the career I want to go down. Second point, which I found quite valuable, is getting work experience. I've just managed to get a job out of the voluntary organisation I've been in for only 9 months, so work experience, especially in today's industry, is invaluable. As always, guys, if you enjoyed this content, Please feel free to like and subscribe and share with your friends who may benefit from it. In terms of work experience, if you're currently struggling with that, head over to my career development page, Law Students Unite, which not only gives insight into the legal industry, but it also gives tips and exposure to work experience opportunities within that field also. Thanks for watching, guys, and see you next time.
I'm a little dreamer.